Hey, School of Moxie podcast fam. Mary here, popping in to give you just a little intermission snack between seasons 1 and 2. Keep listening for a real peek into what happens when life throws you curveballs and how I've used it to set up season 2 in a big way. Y'all, I have missed you. I have updates for you on season 2 production for our Ted Lasso season, and I'm sharing a recent interview I had with Ashlyn and Victoria over on the Take the Leap podcast. Those are the big items that are up for discussion in today's podcast drop. I'll have timestamps in the show notes, so if you want to skip ahead to the interview, you can do that, or just stick with me here and get a real honest update about what it's been like to adjust podcast production on a seasonal show like mine. From the date that I'm publishing this episode, season 1 for School of Moxie only wrapped about 4 months ago, but I swear it feels like 4 years. I know I'm not the only one. It feels like life has been lifing really hard since the fourth quarter of 2023. And I think some of you would probably like to argue with me that it's been lifing a lot longer than that. But no matter what, we can all agree that the first quarter of 2024 was a lot, to say the least. So it's no surprise that this podcast is a seasonal show because I love producing contained themes rather than an ongoing discussion that drops weekly. Most of this is because for myself and my guests, we utilize a television show, and in the future, I am promising we will also incorporate movies into the mix, but not this coming season, not yet, which means everyone needs to watch the show, and then we all need to digest the business lessons that we get from the themes in the show. And as a creator, I know that it's one thing to hold a vision in your mind, but an entirely different thing to execute that vision in real time. Then you add into the mix the guests who are real people, believe it or not, with their own real lives, which includes coordinating availability. And then you've also got pre-production to make it possible for your guests to show up successfully. And, it's a lot of moving parts. So I ended season 1 pretty darn tired, which was partly a function of the actual production for season 1 because I did a lot of travel last year, but also because I had a bunch of curveballs land in my lap as I was rounding the bases to home plate. Yes, I realize that is a baseball analogy. And Ted Lasso for season 2 is all about soccer, as we say in the States, football if you're anywhere else in the world and you're actually cool. So you would never have known that anything was actually happening off the mic, but I was managing a lot of family needs and a lot of health issues that finally came to a head after the new year. So I took a good break over the holidays, and that went well into January. And I was thinking that should be enough, but well, it wasn't. We had an ice storm in the Pacific Northwest in January, and I ended up turning into an unpaid construction manager for a project that shouldn't be that complicated, and yet we're still not done with repairs. And then the health things, those finally came out in February with some improvements in one area in particular, but some really concerning results in another area. And I've now only just finished the last of a series of treatments that should help me function a lot better moving forward. And it turns out that feeling fatigued wasn't just about me being hard on myself for not being as productive an individual as I would always like to be, but it was actually a chronic condition. And I've simply had to accept the fact that the human side of me has needed medical care, recovery, and rest. But as you know, my business operating name is Sensible Woo. And as I was dealing with all the sensible things in life, the woo-woo side was giving me this huge I told you so lecture because the universe always has magical timing. And I have been truly, honestly forced to just slow the fuck down and just chill the fuck out. And my question for you is, are you feeling that too? Because the people that I've continued to coach through all of these delays in my own production have been reiterating a very similar dialogue. And I'm here to tell you on the podcast today that you are not alone and that this seems to be a very collective pattern among many. So not everyone, because nothing's absolute, but a lot of us have had very similar stories on delays for all manner of projects and goals. So if you're one of the delayed bunch, then congratulations. You are right on time. Being forced to wait out the period that I thought was to serve as my pre-production and scripting time, it actually turned out to be pure magic. But just because it's magic doesn't mean it's comfortable or easy. And I think that's the really big takeaway lesson here. So here's what I know for season 2 so far. Ted Lasso is still a show we're watching and talking about. And yes, Ted Lasso is a business story with a ton of leadership lessons. I've even seen a couple of summits and conferences fed my way where people are utilizing Ted Lasso as the basis for getting together, which I think is fantastic. So I'm super excited to do Ted Lasso for season 2 on the podcast. And the guest lineup that I've decided this season is much smaller. I'll be announcing them in the next couple of months with a season trailer. We are still recording in person in studios this year, so you can keep up with me on that. And I will continue to show you behind the scenes snippets on my Instagram account. The link for that is in the show notes if you're not already following me there. But because of my own travel limitations this year between family caregiving and some of the health issues, I am limiting my studio recording. So that's been part of the re-engineering of my production for season 2. So that means that a couple of voices may be invited to contribute through their home studios if they can't make it to the studio recording locations that we're going to batch recordings for. And I have a few surprises up my sleeve, so I'm not going to leak them in this intermission episode. I know, but what would be the fun in that? Like, we need some surprises, right? What you will be hearing is a discussion on the death of absolutism in season 2. Originally, when I first was inspired to use Ted Lasso for season 2, I saw it as a discussion on dismantling of dude bro marketing practices and toxic masculinity in entrepreneurship. But then I saw the femme business community step right up to bat in quarter 1. Yes, we are going to stick with the baseball analogy for this podcast episode, apparently. And I realized that the common problem between both toxic masculinity and toxic femininity in business practices is the abusive way in which both methodologies attempt to sever their audiences from nuanced approaches. Absolutism is the thing that keeps those paradigms alive. And Ted Lasso is definitely the show that doesn't allow absolutism to exist in the story arcs for any of the characters. I have seen so many entrepreneurs struggling with absolutism right now, and it's showing up in ways that prevent people from becoming great leaders, prevents them from growing and expanding their businesses. And it's truly a slippery slope. And it's not even a gendered thing. So we talk about toxic masculinity or toxic femininity. You can think of it as yin and yang, or just a balance of energies. So whether you identify with masculinity or femininity is really beside the point. The self-inflicted segregation, which is promoted through an emotional buy-in to the toxic methods of the previous cycle in online businesses, is where this absolutism shows up. And because this is kind of complicated to talk about, because it's highly nuanced, it's not the thing that gets sold to you in the old business methods. It's not easily dismissed into category A or category B. We're going to need a whole season of discussions to really pick this apart and talk about it and get comfortable with nuance again. And Ted Lasso is going to be the perfect medium to hold a beautiful space for us in the very near future. All right, that's all I've got for you on season 2 preview updates. Before we get into the episode here today that I'm sharing from Ashlyn and Victoria at Take the Leap, I wanted to give a shout out to a podcast network that I've been a part of. We are called the Feminist Podcasters Collective, and I wanted to introduce a few of them to you in today's intermission episode. So here's a business lesson before you hear about their podcasts. While you can skip ahead with the timestamps in the show notes and jump to the podcast interview from Take the Leap, I suggest that you calm your nervous system right now and take a moment to really listen to these women introducing their podcasts to you. It's a staggering statistic that just 29% of podcasters identify as female. And by taking the time to listen to these ad spots, you are helping change the way you also operate in the world. This is not just because I happen to be a nutty fan for all things television, including commercials. Yes, I purposely pay for the commercial tiers on all of my streaming services because I actually want to see the commercials. They show me trends in business, and I would hope that you would watch them to spot trends in business too. As a business owner, part of your systems needs to be around emotional groundedness. And as we like to say at Sensible Woo, you are your best system. So when you train your business brain to skip over content like a podcaster's ad spot, you inadvertently train your brain to skip over important details that can help your business build stronger strategies down the line. Hopefully, I don't need to repeat that for the cheap seats in the back. If you don't believe me, well, you can look at my entire business. My entire business has been built on this detrimental habit that people have developed. People have paid me lots of money over the years to help them rewire their systems and their businesses, which always starts with the individual self. And doing things like learning how to listen carefully to the world around you, especially learning how to listen and really hear a woman's voice and the words coming out of her mouth. So with that, meet some of the podcasters from the Feminist Podcasters Collective right now.
Business as usual? No way. It's time to do things differently. Let's make business a catalyst for creating a more equitable world. Hi, I'm Becky Mollenkamp, host of Feminist Founders Podcast, and I'm bringing you interviews with business owners and thought leaders who are challenging white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal norms in business. This season, I'll be talking to incredible leaders like Rebecca Barucki, the founder of Row House Publishing, Jen Harper, founder of Cheekbone Beauty, Elisa Camelhort-Page, co-founder of Blog Her, best-selling author Geraldine DeRuiter, Daisy Gillespie of Mindful Closet, Anna Deshawn of Queer News, immigration lawyer Bianca Jordan, and so many more. Feminist Founders will challenge your beliefs about how business should run and inspire you to begin making changes, big and small, so that your business is an agent for good. Subscribe to Feminist Founders today wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's exhausting trying to be productive all the time. Join me, Becca Rich, founder of the Holistic Time Coach, on Not Too Productive, as I, a recovering type A overthinker, overachiever, find the balance between getting things done and sustaining my well-being, presence, and joy. Every week, you can expect fun stories and countercultural insights and strategies that'll help you feel accomplished and enjoy your precious time on this earth. Subscribe now on the podcast app of your choice, and remember, don't be too productive. Life's too short to be busy all of the time.
Family, it's your favorite queer radio personality, Anna Deshawn, and I bring you the Queer News Podcast every Monday by 7 a.m. Chicago time. I'm talking politics and following all these anti-trans bills. I'm talking culture and won awards for our Brittany Griner coverage, okay? I'm talking entertainment like the latest queer movies and queer television. If you are looking to stay in the know, pod into Queer News. We are Queer News done right. Listen inside the Cube app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Have you ever pictured yourself hosting your own show? Maybe it's time. This show is edited and produced by podcastabundance.com. And if you like what we're doing, we'd like to do it for your business too. I'm Virginia Elder, and I've been helping entrepreneurs and business owners launch and grow podcasts since 2019. I coach you through branding, establishing structure and workflow, and recording your episodes. Then my team and I professionally edit your audio and video so you don't have to. We'll even write your episode descriptions and titles so that when potential customers turn to Google, your show appears in their search results. Establish authority in your niche, expand your reach, and create a library of helpful content for your potential and current clients, all with your own podcast. I'm here to hold your hand and make podcasting the exciting, up-leveling experience it should be, skirting you past the tech and software struggles. Take the first step by booking a call with me using the link in the show notes or by visiting podcastabundance.com. Now, on to the rest of the show.
Welcome to the Scenic Route Podcast, the weekly podcast for smart, heartfelt entrepreneurs who don't buy into the generic online biz circus anymore and are ready to build a business around their desired lifestyle. I'm your host, Jennifer Walter, rebranding expert and sociologist, and I'm all for giving you the tools and insights you really need to build a life and business on your own terms. Every Tuesday, I release a brand new episode bringing you creative business ideas, insightful mindset advice, and candid stories from the lived experience of people who are thriving on the scenic business route. And for more of the scenic route, head to scenicroutepodcast.com for show notes, transcripts, and resources to help you build an aligned and successful business too. Don't forget to tell all of your friends that this show is now available to listen to completely free anywhere you can find podcasts. And please leave a rating and review, as they really help me get this podcast in front of more like-minded people. Now it's time to get your favorite brew and join me for candid and inspiring conversations around entrepreneurship, mindset, and building a brand and business on your own terms. This is the Scenic Route Podcast.
Hey, it's Jordan, the Radical Joy Coach, and I've got one question for you. Are you ready to rest? If you just screamed an enthusiastic yes, join me at the Just Joy with Jordan, the podcast that helps bleeding heart founders learn how to rest. If you've ever wondered, why is it so hard for you to rest? Or why do you feel guilty when you do? Or why are you so good at helping everyone else but yourself? This is for you. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hi there, it's Valerie Friedlander, life business alignment coach, sociologist, mom, and host of the Unlimited podcast, where we talk individual empowerment with social systems awareness. If you are trying to release learned limitations and live a more present, joyful, and intentional life, this podcast is for you. Twice a month, I share insights and interviews to help you reach for the stars while keeping your feet on the ground. Join me and let's unlock a life that's as badass as you are.
Thank you to my sisterhood of creators at the Feminist Podcasters Collective. Now, let's get into the episode from the Take the Leap podcast. You'll recognize Ashlyn from season 1 of the School of Moxie podcast with me. She helped us open our entire season last year with gaming insights that set the stage from video game to television series with The Last of Us. Ashlyn co-hosts this podcast with Victoria, and we had a really great time talking about content production. We talked about incorporating your intuitive side in business, which is a huge question I get all the time. And we talked a lot about that on this episode. And also just pretty much talking about getting shit done, because that's how you build anything in this world, by taking action.
Take the Leap is the podcast where we get real about the roller coaster that is entrepreneurship and life. Sure, some folks make running a business look like a walk in the park, but let's be honest, it's more like a wild ride through a theme park with a lot of unexpected twists and turns.
Join us, your co-hosts, Ashlyn
and Tori,
as we spill the beans on our own real-life experiences and shine a spotlight on some amazing guests. From the highs of success stories to the lows of epic failures. And hey, we'll even throw in some cringe-worthy, laugh-out-loud, embarrassing moments for good measure.
So buckle up and tune in every Tuesday and Thursday for a dose of raw, unfiltered truth about what it's really like to chase your dreams and build a business.
Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just dipping your toes into the startup world, we've got something for everyone. Even if it's just to make you think, wow, I'm glad I didn't do what they did.
Welcome back to the Take the Leap podcast. We are so excited to have a conversation today with our guest, Mary Williams. Mary is the CEO and founder of Sensible Woo, home of the School of Moxie podcast, a librarian by trade who established herself in the entertainment industry as the digital archivist for a major animation production studio. She has consulted for not only entertainment companies, but also marketing agencies, tech startups, and nonprofit fundraising organizations. For the last 8 years, she's been a business coach for highly sensitive neurodivergent business owners, championing the focus on systems and data management as a solid foundation for sustainable businesses that scale. The model at Sensible Woo is that you are always your best system, which means embracing the magic of your intuitive side is just as important as the data your business produces. Mary has been an online creator since 2010, which makes her a tough old bird in the online entrepreneurship community, and you should definitely ask her about all the crazy shit she's been up to over the years, as I do all the time. You can travel with Mary as she records guests in studios through her weekly emails, YouTube, Instagram, and Threads. So welcome, Mary. Thank you for being on the Take the Leap podcast with us.
Yes.
Hello.
So excited. So excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here. Congratulations on launching. It's so exciting.
Yay.
Thank you.
I'm super honored. When you guys reached out, I was like, oh, thanks. Like, that's a lot of trust to ask someone to come in and be a guest.
Yes.
A lot.
Well, we kind of stalk you and your weekly newsletters. I watch your extended readings religiously, though I have to admit, I don't always watch them at the beginning of the week. I often watch them at the very end, although it just depends on the weekend.
I've discovered that with people too. And it's been kind of like coming in when I've been channeling, because I really like try to tap into the energy of our subscriber group.
Collective.
And it's been feeling more and more like the spectrum of time that people consume them is getting wider and wider. And so like as I channel, like it literally feels like it gets wider and wider. So I start ending in all these things like, if you get it now or if you get it later, like it's okay. And it's really wild how the information comes in after having done readings for so many years now. That's been a very cool thing to see.
Yeah. Before I bought into the paid newsletter, I was always like experiencing like lots of FOMO when I like just watched the general reading on Saturday, and I'm like, I want the rest of it. So I've stopped watching it on Saturdays and being like, this is my Sunday morning welcome to the next week that is starting. So
you're not the only one. You're not the only one. There's more than one person who's told me. They're like, my Sunday morning ritual is.
It's very nice.
I love that. It is very helpful.
Well, part of the reason we invited you here today is that we want to hear, what is your Take the Leap story?
Like, I feel like I'm going to try not to tell like a Gone with the Wind level story. I don't think we want to be here for 4 hours. So I had a corporate career like a lot of people did. And like my bio says, I've been a creator since 2010, and I was a blogger back in the day. So I was working for Disney in animation. I was their digital archivist, and I fell in love with sewing, and I would sew my own clothes. And at the time, the blogging world was really taking off. Well, I mean, a big part of it had already taken off, honestly. And there were a lot of sewing bloggers, and I stumbled upon them because I was looking up information on the internet, trying to figure out how to do this seam or that seam, or what the heck does this mean? I don't know how to do that. And there were some people who were very well established before me. And I looked at it and I thought, you guys are totally like, this is your job. And I hated going to an office. Like, I hated driving to work every day. I do not belong in an office ever. And I was just always seeking, like, how do I find something where I don't have to go into an office? And I noticed that these people were definitely entrepreneurs in their own right. And they were doing something that they loved, and they were getting paid through sponsors and advertisers, and they were selling some of their product. And I love to write, and I loved the format of it. So I started blogging, and then lo and behold, my little blog grew legs and took off, and I started earning like real side hustle money, and I had sponsors and advertisers every month, and I had quite the readership, and every now and then some piece of content would go a little viral. And you know, it was great until I got really burnt out by having to be this like content production, you know, slave. I couldn't do it anymore. And I would be really tired, and I started losing my creativity. I couldn't figure out what was I going to make next. And people were like, I need another dress. And I was like, I can't make another dress. So about that time, I was starting to get questions from people like, how did you monetize it? How did you make the money? And that's what kind of got me into the business world. And then I'll try to like shorten the professional stories, but I finally did go work in a library. I was the head of technology while they went through a huge renovation in Austin, Texas. And while I was there, my friends back from Los Angeles sure did miss me. And they started asking, are you available, or do you know somebody to help us with all these things? And I leapt out into consulting and did that for a while. And then through just like the, law of attraction, small business owners were coming to me, and I found that they were way more enjoyable than the big B2B contracts with the entertainment companies, because the entertainment companies were notorious for not finishing their contracts, and people there come and they go, and it's like a revolving door. And my entrepreneurs were just like in it to win it, and they just wanted to finish the work. And they also wanted this intersection of like the woo-woo with the very practical. And so they would usually start by booking readings with me, because I'd been doing readings this entire time, nights and weekends. And they would ask about their businesses in their readings, but they would ask about things like how to integrate their software for their launch. And I'm like, this is not a tarot question. Like, why are you asking me this question? And so I was really reflecting on this question before we recorded, because you guys sent them to me. And I was thinking, like, I don't know that I really felt like I actually took the leap until I left consulting. There was something that was so just like usual, familiar in consulting, that it never really felt like I had actually left the corporate environment. But when I fully went into coaching, that was when I think I really felt like I took the leap. And, now I can't imagine not doing it, because like there's no way you can get me back into a corporate environment. There's just no way. I won't do it. Yeah.
I think Ashlyn and I can very much relate to that. I don't think there's enough money in the world to make us go back into an office every day.
No,
not unless the culture changes. Yeah. But even then, I don't want to be beholden to anybody.
No, I mean, I hated the idea of I had to show up and be there for a prescribed amount of time, when there would be days where, like, I mean, I'm not afraid of working hard. I work really hard in my business and I love it. And there are times where you have long days and I'm like, great, I have a 10-hour day, a 12-hour day, not a problem. But if you're like, you have to sit here for 8 hours, and I'm like, but there was only 2 hours worth of productive work today. Why do I have to be here when I could be taking care of other things or taking care of myself? And I think the only thing I miss are I've made a lot of really great friends over the years through office culture, and we're still friends to this day. The friendships that I made, especially when I was at Disney, have been everlasting. So, I love my friends. I love watching movies when they come out and seeing their names roll across the screens in the credits, and I always cheer for them. So I love that. But people always say like, oh, wow, you worked at Disney. And I'm like, yes, it was fun until it wasn't. But I just did not belong in an office. So it can be Disney and you can still be like, I don't want to be here right now. You can still say that.
Such a good point. That's such a good point. You could literally have your dream job on paper and still not be a good fit.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who still ask me to this day, especially from my old grad program, where I got my degree for library science, and they'll say, how do I get the job that you had? And I'm like, well, there's really no clear path to that either, because it was kind of made for me by me, and then I left and it doesn't exist anymore. And there are other people doing something similar, but it's like different titles, different things. And, and yeah, it just points out that there are no straight line paths to anything.
Yep.
And you see it all the time in our entrepreneurial world, which I think is why we love this question of like, what made you take the leap? Because everybody has a different story. I know that a lot of people get laid off and that's how they end up doing it. But, I just finally was like, I just can't do a commute anymore. The scariness, the pain of the scariness of being on my own is better than having to sit in a car.
The trade-offs. Absolutely. Yeah, my commute
That's
is
awesome.
walking from my bedroom into this office. That's, like a 20-step walk over.
It's the best thing ever. And I had this dream. I just wanted to work at home every day with my cat, Mr. Giles. I just want, and I thought, this sounds so silly, but it's a big happiness factor for me. But I think more than anything, like it just has really pointed out how much I just wanted peace and quiet during my day. And I find offices to be very noisy. I get interrupted all the time, and I really enjoy uninterrupted time. So over the years, I had, amassed enough seniority in various positions where I could get work from home time, because that wasn't very common. And whenever I worked from home, I always got 10 times the amount of work done in half the amount of office time. And I was always happier, and my stress was less. And I just have realized that I just need my stress to be less.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fair. It's fair, especially if you're doing anything creative or problem solving, which I guess most entrepreneurs now are.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, you need that space to not be stressed out all the time, because it's just really hard to think and to make things happen.
Yeah.
Well, what is something, now that you are where you're at now, what is something that you would tell younger Mary when you first started vlogging or you first took the leap? What would you tell her now?
I think I would tell her, leave space in your thought process and in your visioning process for all the things you don't know that also, newsflash, nobody else knows, because the world is going to change no matter what. And what you think is the path to freedom now is going to change. It's going to look so different, because there's going to be the ways that we work, the ways that we make money, they grow, and I feel like they're growing faster and faster now. So like when I was a blogger, YouTube, there were people who were YouTubing, but it required a lot of capital. It was technically way harder to do than it is now. And the barrier to entry was a lot harder. It was a lot higher. And the one thing that time period had going for it was that paid traffic really wasn't a major thing. Like if you did advertising, you were probably working with like an actual advertising firm, and they were doing much more complicated things than we can do now, where you have like Meta Business Suite and you can go in there and like fire up some $3 a day ads. Like you couldn't do that back then. And now that, like, I just recorded YouTube videos earlier this week on my phone, and when I started blogging, I think I had my first iPhone by then. I think so. I sound like such an old fart when I think about it.
If it was 2010, we had iPhones by then, because I think,
Yes,
I think I got
I remember Steve Jobs was still alive, and he was on the board at Disney. And I remember they gave me a BlackBerry in my first position in the internet group, which doesn't exist anymore. And they gave me a BlackBerry, and then I think it was fall of 2007 or spring of 2008, they released the iPhone, and you had to be a director or higher to get an iPhone, and then they were going to roll them out on down. And I still have my very first iPhone, because I'm one of those people who keeps your stuff. And I was like, maybe I should, yeah. I think I might end up selling it. I don't know.
For like nostalgia.
It might be worth a lot now. Yeah, I was going to say, somebody might want it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like who we were before, what we've done in the past. I think like if you think about yourself today and you think about what's coming up ahead of you, I don't know that you can even comprehend what will change and what will happen. Like I see changes dawning on the media landscape, which I find really fascinating and exciting. But I'm like, I have no idea what that means. Like creators are gaining more and more power. Indie creators are. And I think it's just a matter of time before the larger studios start creating more slices of pie for indie creators, because they need those creators to retain the audiences that they're losing with their mainstream content. And like, what does that mean for us? I don't know. No idea.
Yeah. Find out. It's a journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting that you talk about like the mainstream versus like the indie creators, because yeah, there's some stuff that I'll like watch that I'll be like, yeah, I'm turning this off. This is total crap. Like it's a little bit of brain rot. And the more authentic like indie folks are the better ones to take a look at.
Yeah. I think that because the barrier to entry is so low, now there's such a volume of stuff that it's really easy to put something out. So you have to kind of wade through the mediocre stuff, but the really good stuff pops. Like it really, really pops these days. And I see indie creators banding together and doing really interesting collaborations where, I think that there's going to be some disruption to the existing system. We've been watching it kind of break apart more and more ever since I left the entertainment industry. It certainly has been. But we're watching so we're like recording a podcast right now. So in the podcast landscape, you've got these studios and, indie creators are like, hey, what about us? Like, you can't just force us aside. Like, indie creators make up the majority of the creator part of that economy. And yeah, there's some really inconsistent creation out there, and there's also some really like bad quality too. But the celebrities that have entered the space, it's sort of like they're on their own planet in a way. And I'm curious to see what the indie market does, to be honest with you.
I feel like every celebrity at this point has a podcast.
Yes.
And has, yeah.
Especially since the actor and writer strikes that we had in the summer of 2023. I think when you think about talent, they are, this is like weirdo facts that I carry around in my head. Like they are incorporated. They have their own corporation entity, and that's how they get paid. So the studios will actually pay their business, and then they get payroll from their business, and they have teams that work for them, everything from like their stylist to their agent, manager, all of that. And so they're paying salaries through their corporate entity to people. And when you think about this walking individual, and you think like, oh, that's this famous person, this actor, you think of them and it's like, no, that's a business on two legs. And they lost major revenue streams in 2023 for a big period of time. And it's kind of like us as coaches seeing a disruption in the coaching industry right now, where we're like, oh, wow, people aren't buying through the usual things. They don't want offers like this, and this right now. And I'm seeing a lot of, especially high ticket offers are just bottoming out right now. And it's the same thing. It's like going through an actor strike. What are you going to do? You're going to fire up another revenue stream, and you're going to go for something that you can do. And the actors went for something that really makes sense. Audio is definitely a place that they haven't played in very much. So it'd be a very smart thing to do if you were an actor.
All right, last question before we put you in the hot seat. What's your why? Why do you do the things that you do?
Oh my goodness. So many reasons why. So y'all know I do human design, and I have been diving into my human design a lot in the last couple of years. And for me personally, to learn more about myself too, not just to help my clients, but I am a manifester. For my human design nerds, I'm a 6/3 emotional manifester. So there you go. And and one of the big things for manifestors is working on creating a life where you preserve your peace. And I have found that my big why actually, I think, is constantly in service of peace. Like, I might joke that I just want to work from home with my cat all day. And yes, that is true. but that's part of the equation that brings me peace. And this year for 2023, I was telling you, Ashlyn, when you were here in town and we were having breakfast, and it just sort of like showed up on my door in January. I haven't picked a word of the year in forever. And this year I realized that I do have a theme of the year, and it is spaciousness. And I've discovered that spaciousness is giving me the flexibility to finally create more and more and more peace. And I went through some really hard years personally and professionally, and my physical health has suffered. And I've been working with a healer here. There are so many changes that I've made in my life, and I'm just really trying to make sure that my peace isn't disrupted by something like illness. Like the disruption from illness is awful. Peacefulness when it comes to the steadiness of revenue coming in the door, getting it in the way that feels ethical and in alignment with me. So I really feel like that has truly been my big why. I know that when I'm at peace, I have a better impact on other people, but if I'm in fight or flight, like it's not going to happen.
That's so lovely. It's such a way that I'd love to live. And I think why a lot of people go into working for themselves, like,
yes,
it's just, we all have one life, right? Like, or in theory, we have one life, and let's make the most of it.
Yeah. I just think that COVID showed, I would hope that it showed everybody. I think most people really picked up on it in varying degrees, but there were just a lot of ways that we were living life that were not working. And I think right now, some of the discomfort we're having in the world is just as a result of those systems still not having been re-engineered so that we can have more personal peace. You're seeing that struggle with people who do have jobs where they are being asked to go back into the office, and they're like, why? You don't want to, and a lot of times they're really willing to be on sort of this on-call hybrid sort of fashion, but there are some companies and some systems out there that really want people to just be there for the sake of FaceTime.
Butts and seats. Yep. Yeah, I don't think you're doing work when you're not in front of me. Come on.
I know. I actually find that to be like a super codependent pattern. I think that's where codependency shows up in the corporate world.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yes. Well, managers don't manage if they don't have people to manage, right? Because if you think about all of the offices and all of the working environments where you felt like your manager did nothing and really their only job was to like yell at you, or like wander around the office and just be like, what are you doing right now? And I would be like, my work, go away. Like, don't bother me. Let me type my things out. But yeah, there were so many office jobs where I know folks who like watched YouTube during the day, or they were like literally just waiting for a message to do the next step and not really being treated as like a creative, being. It's just like, punch, that a lot of, what are they called? Like the manufacturing line sort of things in corporate environments that are not supposed to mimic that at all.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think it kind of goes back to your early question that you had also asked, Victoria, like, what would younger Mary think? Like, it's that whole, we don't know. Like, Ashlyn, you're totally right that like the existing corporate structure is so much based on this old Henry Ford Model T production line, formula of you show up, you clock in, you're there, and then you clock out. And the world is like it changed a long time ago, but now we were forced to realize like, hey, it is completely different. And those of us who've jumped into entrepreneurship totally demonstrated during COVID, during the first shutdown, like, hey, there are people who are actually fully functioning right now and they're making bank. They're doing really, really well. And I just wonder like how work is going to change. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised with me being in the coaching space. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to find that a lot of my coaching isn't with the usual market of like independent business owners, but it starts to bleed over into more of this like established corporate entity type workforce.
Maybe if they start to evolve, or at least we hope they start to evolve.
Yeah. Ashlyn, you and I had a conversation. I don't know, this has been like at least a few months ago now, about B2B contracts and work, and how that space has been pretty hot, actually, quite hot. And I even have a discovery call. We're meeting next week. Like, it's just showing up on my doorstep. Like, people are literally asking me, they're like, Mary, can you help? And I find that pattern, I always look for patterns, and I find that pattern really telling. I find it really telling.
All right. Are we ready for some hot seat questions? Yeah. What is either and or the worst or best piece of unsolicited advice that you've received over the years? If you want to do both, you can do both. You just pick one.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I'm going to make this rush of things that have come to me. The best or worst? I've had both. Okay. I'm having this like very vivid memory right now of probably the worst piece of advice that came from a horrible working situation, which happened while I was in the beginning stages of blogging, and like solidified in my heart that I was like, I got to get out of corporate. But there was somebody who is a superior to me, and she did not appreciate me in a meeting asking her clarifying questions, because she wanted what she wanted. And then she later told me that if I didn't do it her way, I was going to have no career there. And I just remember learning from other people in the office who had been there a long time before me that she had done this to them years prior and had indeed held back their careers, and they stayed in those jobs. And I remember thinking, this is the best, worst piece of advice you could have ever given me. You showed me exactly who you are, and you showed me exactly what happens to people here. And you also solidified for me why I don't belong in an office. And I think sometimes the best, worst pieces of advice show up in those kinds of ways. They help us make decisions. Mm-hmm. Oh, look at me giving my thumbs up on
thumbs up. Yeah.
I stick out my thumb a lot because the thumbs up comes up every time on meetings. It's crazy now. Yeah, I it's funny because like it seemed, I'm like thinking aloud while I'm talking to you guys, and like I'm thinking, oh, that was like the worst piece of advice ever. And I'm like, it was also the best advice.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Told you
to
what
listen
you
to your gut. Yeah. Listen to that intuition piece of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I've had a lot of other really great pieces of advice that have come to me through various mentor type figures. One of my very first bosses I ever had, he treated me like an entrepreneur from the get-go. And he was like, the number one thing you need to do is network your buns off. He's like, I'll never stop you from networking. He's like, I want you to order a Rolodex. Keep it on your desk. And I still have it. I still keep it. I still have it. And I still collect people's business cards just because I like it. And and that gave me a chance to really practice connection skills with people, which I think has paid off exponentially.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's really cool, especially to have that so early in your career.
Yeah. Yeah. And like a lot of those contacts, because they were done the old fashioned way, those contacts are like rock solid. Like I can go for literally a decade and not talk to them, reach out to them on LinkedIn and be like, hey, and they're like, what do you need? And I think as business owners, because things tend to move really, really fast, sometimes we forget that cultivation of a relationship from like a real rooted place cannot be undervalued. And I see, and I also meet far too many people in the online business space who clearly are looking for, do you have money? Are you going to pay me? What's your connection? Do they have money? Are they going to pay me? And I'm like, I can smell it. That whiff is so strong. And I'm like, ew, pew, like gross, get out of my face. Like, I don't want it. But I tend to be very wary because I know the difference with people who have really strong connection with me and people who don't. And the sad thing that I see with a lot of entrepreneurs is because we're told go out and network, but nobody's ever actually guided them in networking. They don't really know what they're looking for or what the networking is supposed to do. And, the best networking has no end game ever. It's just this continuing relationship. So yeah, I think that was probably one of the best pieces of advice.
Yeah, you already know that I do a lot of networking, and I think that
Yeah,
it's been very interesting as I do interactions. I was on like speed networking recently, and I connected with a bunch of people, and I looked them up, I did my research, I knew we would be either good referral partners or like I could offer them something. And there was a guy who got really bent out of shape that I didn't know what he did, but I was just like, but bro, like, I'm not here to just like get you clients or like refer you business. Like, I think we have like a reciprocal thing that we can have. Like, I think, what was he? I'm not gonna say his name out loud, but he was one of those that does the digital business card things, which, there's like a billion of them out there now. Like, it's just, like you don't have a new thing. So don't pat yourself on the back for that. But, that's one of the reasons I chose him as a marketer. I was like, I can refer stuff to that. But yeah, he was just so like annoyed that I didn't know who he was. And I was like, well, bro, there were 140 people on that call. And I, connected with about 30 of them, No, my brain doesn't work like that. But another thing is I networked for a very long time before I started a business. And those solid relationships were what helped in the beginning to get those referrals and the word of mouth and like, people in your court to celebrate, that you took the leap and are doing this now. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Such a good point.
I think it's so interesting because like Victoria, you and I are still pretty new connection. We'll get together soon because we're in the same area. Yes. And Ashlyn, I think you and I met a while back now. And I really feel like I was like listening to you talk right now, and I'm like, I'm wondering if the reason why we formed such a good connection is because it's like, when you see yourself in someone else and you're like, you do what I do. You understand. I don't have to explain it to you. And and I think that, and we've referred people to each other, and it's not just about, oh, what are you going to do for me? It's it's better than that, and like the collaboration.
It's a friendship.
Yeah, it is.
On top of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And collaborative. And I just want to play with the folks that I connect with. It's just like, let's play and build something cool and bigger. Like, that's how Tori and I started doing it. So it's like, oh, hey, accountability partners into let's build this random thing. And now we're doing it. And it's so much more fun.
It's been great.
Yeah. I think that's so cool.
It is. It makes business worth it. I will say I'm not as great at networking as Ashlyn, and probably you are, Mary. And I think in my head, I still think of the bros whenever I go to like a networking event. I'm like, I don't want to talk to you like right away. Like, I don't want to talk to you about what you do. I don't, I just kind of am turned off by that very quickly. And I think so many people, when you think of networking, are kind of in that same space. And so I do think there's an opportunity for someone to teach new ways of networking and, building relationships instead of just can you do for me?
There's this incredible episode of that TV show that was on Comedy Central called Corporate, where they talk about networking, and I laugh about it every single time I watch it. Of like, what? You don't have a spreadsheet of all your contacts you've ever made through networking, and like things you can use against them to like blackmail them? Like, that's what I think of when I think of like the old school
so funny.
That's networking so funny. Ways.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that. Okay, so we're talking about taking the leap, right? Like, I think if somebody is trying to take the leap, or they took a leap, but they're like, I need to take another better leap, I do think it's about relationship building. And, I think you do have to, at your core, be curious about people. Now, you don't have to be an extrovert. Like, I'm not an extrovert. I'm an introvert. I'm not shy, because there's a difference between being shy and being an introvert. But like, I like being around people for too long in too many ways exhausts me, which is probably also why I don't like being in an office. And like, I preserve my peace in my home office. I'm so not lonely being home alone working in an office. So I'm amongst friends. and I think I meet so many people when I do go out to events. I've been investigating like the local chambers around here and some new groups, and there are just a lot of people who are, I don't know if they're burnt out on people, or they're burnt out on the relationships in their own personal life, and it's transferring over into their business world. I mean, this is where we get into like the therapy territory around business. But like, it shows, they're like anti people. And it's like, bro, you need to go take thee to like a retreat spa. You need to just like go away from people for a while and like reconnect with yourself and find what happiness is for you again, because it is coming off you in waves. And I think, as somebody who does a lot of energetics work, I walk into a room and I can find them really overwhelming, and I'll be like really exhausted. But, I meet people, and some people, like, they don't think they're being desperate, but they're in front of you with this desperation, like, I got to make my quota, or I'm gonna, find some people to sell things to. And it's like, I will walk into a networking room, and it's like, of course I have offers for sale. Of course there are things I want to do. Even if I'm launching, I always walk into the room like, I'm just here to see who I see. Because we are not having that conversation in this room. If you are actually going to be like a coaching client, we're not going to talk about that in this room. Maybe you might ask me some questions, or I might discover that you could be possibly a good fit, but like, we're not going to have that conversation here. It's not the time. It's not the place. But like, I need to know, like, are you living? Are you breathing? Do you have matter between your ears? Like, what are we talking about here? And I don't know that our entrepreneur world fully gives credit to the fact that what we do is so very social, and that developing social skills is a really big part of it. Doesn't mean you have to be a party animal, but it does mean that like, you have to be able to connect with other people. And I think a lot of people do struggle in business because, you can get away with not connecting with people for quite a while. Like, if you have enough dollars, you can buy paid traffic that will bring you plenty of customers, and they'll buy your thing. But the longevity of that and the sustainability of that, it's like, I don't know that works. Like the discovery meeting that I have this coming week, the person who brought me into that, I met her at the beginning of 2020, like right before COVID lockdown. And she kind of floated in and out of my world a bit. And it's like, where are we? We're in like 2024. So 4 years later, and it's has a very like promising situation that could show up here. And like, when you tap into the energy of it, there's like a rootedness and depth, and there's more there than just like, oh, we need something. It's not transactional,
Yeah. It's so cool that you say that, because I think a lot of people don't realize that like, people don't really buy off that first interaction, that it is, you're just trying to get them to your next thing, inviting to them to the next thing. I keep telling that to clients of, they'll be like, I have such a great thing. Why is nobody buying? And I'm like, what's your journey to get them there? Sometimes people are just not ready. People, I know when you and I first met, you were running incubator, and I was like, oh my God, I need that. But I'm so not ready, because I was working full time, and I was like, I would love to work, like focus full time on my business and be in this program. And it just, it didn't make sense, for me at the time, but I know it was a really great, a great thing that was running and doing that. And so, yeah, you have to be able to catch people at the different journey points and have, and be patient and really make it about serving them and that ideal, person, as opposed to, yeah, like you said, the desperation. Oh my God, buy my thing, buy my thing, buy my thing. And it's like, that just feels icky, for folks.
Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to do that. And you don't want that to happen to you either. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think, like, if you are really building relationships, it's like a hashtag duh moment when you know what your market wants and what's happening in the world, because you actually have people who are interacting with you regularly, and you're like, well, Ashlyn and I had a conversation this morning and she told me the story about whatever. And then this afternoon I have coffee with Victoria and she tells me a story, and I'm like, I think I'm seeing a pattern. And it's like, oh, maybe I need to, like, this is how I ended up retiring Incubator. It's like, I just kept hearing more and more of the same refrain. And I was like, oh, I need to retire this. No, I'm gonna stop fighting for this. I need to retire it. I need to go back to content production. I need to dial in systems specifically for helping people create their content for their marketing purposes. Like, people hire marketing people like you, and they don't have content. They don't have anything. And it's like, it's really hard to hire you if they can't even like regularly produce things. And and I have the systems for that. And I was like, oh, like, it was so readily available and obvious. And I think when people get scared of pivoting, it's because they're not plugged in. They don't really have, those business friendships. And yeah, and that just takes time. It takes time. I think you need a lot more time than
you realize.
Yeah.
You perfectly laid up my next question for the hot seat. So thank you for doing that. So of course, both Tori and I love your weekly emails. What tips do you have for keeping up consistency with your content creation?
Oh, it's such a good question. I really feel like you have to find an angle that you love, because there's always something that you do in life that you love. Like Ashlyn and I just happen to know, like, you love your fur babies so much. And if Ari needs a walk, gosh darn it, you are taking your pup for a walk, and like create, like, if it's your email newsletter, it's gotta be on that level. It's I write this and publish it. It's the same thing as like my dog child gets the care and feeding and attention from me. And it's like, and so does my email newsletter. And I know that probably sounds like, Mary, you're crazy, but that is how you make dedicated space for these things. And there's always going to be like a quantity factor that's going to vary between people. And, like, I'm on a health journey right now. I used to be a total gym rat, and I have not been a gym rat for a very long time. So for me to be like, I'm going to be in the gym, pumping iron and doing my reps and, running 5Ks at lunch, like every day. Whoa, hell to the no. Like, I don't have it in me. It's not happening right now. But I think you also have to have the belief that you're capable of it. And it's like, if I can do that once per week, every week, I'm winning, And I think with our business owners, like, usually we'll say, if you can do that newsletter like once per month, and it's not an afterthought, it's like, I spent time on this, I made time for it, and I'm publishing it on the first of every month. And it's like, okay, so 15 days out, I'm already starting to like craft it and put it together. And so it's not just like 5 rando sentences in a paragraph and you're like, I sent it. It's like, no, people aren't going to engage with that. Like, you're actually thinking about what your people want. Funnily, I think it also is coming back to our previous discussion about relationships and, realizing that your content is a really big part of your relationships. And it's how people get closer to you. Like you two are so sweet when you're like, I love your Sunday newsletter. And I'm like, I love that you love that Sunday newsletter. But like look at the relationship that is formed through it, you know? And I just think that to create the consistency, you've got to want to build the relationship.
Yeah.
You have to. And
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I have such a funny story to tell too. So I was like zoning out listening to the readings and you said my name. Like I had just started to like get distracted by something and you said my name in a video and I was like, oh shit. Like it was really funny because I think I was like walking around this room or something and I was just like, I was laughing so hard because it just caught me and I was like, oh damn, Mary knows that I'm like not paying attention. And it was hilarious. I felt like a little kid being like scolded.
But like you guys are two really great examples. You leave comments on videos and stuff like that. And like I'll respond to you, you know. So actually the date that we're recording this right now on Sunday this weekend, I already recorded the readings, and on Sunday, one of our newsletter members, she posted a question after the pillar readings, and so I made this coming week's like all about that. So it's kind of funny we're talking about introversion because it has to do with introversion and making content, and I'm responding to her, and it's for the benefit of everyone else. And you know, that is a relationship. It's totally a relationship. And I've seen some people give really great examples of developing relationships where it's not like you have to have a conversation with that person one-on-one every day. I think sometimes people think that that's what a relationship is. I think that also just goes back to like codependent patterns that we see so much that gets cultivated through the coaching industry, which is like, if you don't talk to your coach, you can't make a decision. It's like, that's total bullshit, you know? And it's like, oh no, I can't make a decision if I don't talk to my mastermind group. I have to wait, you know? And it's like, you become disempowered. And when I was in Boise this last summer at the ConvertKit conference, Logan Ury, who I believe is like the head of relationships or whatever at Hinge, the dating app, she was one of the keynote speakers, and she showed us some amazing ways of developing community through like a one-way email distribution. So you're sending out emails, but she was prompting them with questions, and people were sending back in their feedback, and then the following week it'd be like, here's what you all said, and they would send it back out, and then people would respond to that, and then they'd send it back out and people would respond to that. And it's like, so those people they aren't on a membership platform together. They're not in a Zoom room. They're not on Discord. They're not even on like YouTube. They're in no place where they can actually see each other's comments, and yet they feel completely connected, like they have a community, and that they're getting it delivered through email. And I personally think email is incredibly powerful. I'm seeing so much evidence of our social platforms starting to do the bait and switch again. Like there's this story this past week of this week or last week, I know it's within the last 2 weeks, where Universal Media Group pulled their catalog from TikTok, and so it includes Taylor Swift's entire catalog. And there are creators who, like, you kind of need music for your TikToks and your Reels. Like they have built those platforms to favor trending audio. So chances are you've also picked trending audio. And because they've pulled that entire catalog of music, and it's not just big artists like Taylor Swift, it's also some of the smaller indie artists, there are creators whose entire body of work has been rendered completely useless. Like their entire library is useless. And, you know, if you are doing an influencer model or you're trying to build your audience and suddenly like your body of work is silent, because there's a lot of people who do the, you know, B-roll with like the text and then it's trending audio. That's pretty much the formula. And at least right now, but I think that's going to force it to change. So, you know, so like, you know, you really want to think about like, where do I insert my voice so that nobody can take my voice from me? Because this is an example of something where your voice is basically taken from you because you didn't actually use your voice, use someone else's voice. in order to help you sell your message. And I just see so much of that. I've had some Instagram reels where I've archived them because for whatever reason the audio got taken down. And there were a couple of reels where they had a lot of traffic on them.
Engagement
And it wasn't just and it wasn't just the view count, because when you're in your insights, you can see what people are doing. And it was like people were going to the profile, they were clicking my links, which is exactly what you want. And all of a sudden the audio's gone, and I'm like, well, I can't use that, And for me, it's not such a big deal. But if you have built your traffic off of social in that way, that becomes a really big deal.
Well, and if that's the only thing you have in your marketing, you don't have a website, you don't have email. I mean, that's why so much of the conversations I have with folks is like, screw social. We'll get to that. We need your website to work. We need your email platform to work, because you own those properties. You rent space on social media.
Pretty much.
And also, if we drive people to you and you don't have anything together for them to go to, like, what's the point?
Yeah. I love this term that's being used lately called proof of life. And it's like people will go to, say, your Instagram or your LinkedIn or whatever, and they want proof of life. They want to know that you're real, you're not a bot. They want to know that you are kind of sort of current, like you're not like 10 years ago posting, and and then but the other big proof of life is when they go to your website that you have one and it functions, and it's not like this domain is for sale, I mean, it's real. And there's been so many trends that have come and gone over the years where it's like, you don't need a site, you do need a site. I see so many people investing so much money in the 9-grid thing on Instagram, which I think is fine if you're at the point where you've gotten all your other base systems in place. It's like, sure, play with the 9-grid. But, it's kind of like the equivalent of futzing with the colors and making a business card over and over again instead of actually figuring out what you sell. So, so the consistency portion, it is so much a systematic thing. There's an order of operations. It's like a mathematical equation. And I do love me some math. And if you remember your math from high school algebra, there is an order of operations, and you can't do a step that's 5 in when you still haven't solved for the proper set of parentheses. Like you need to do that. Right. Otherwise the math will not math. And I think that's what entrepreneurs see when they're like, how come my thing? I'm like, and it's like, because they haven't heard from you and they're not trained and primed to expect an offer from you over email. So just because you sent your magical email and you're so proud of yourself, you finally did it. Like they don't want you selling your sham wow to their face. They didn't sign up for the infomercial this day, like they don't want it. Yeah. A lot of opinions on it.
I love it. That's such a good point. If someone, your business, Sensible Woo, if someone was new to the world of woo, and like I am, and they wanted to add a little bit of woo into their business, where would you recommend that they start?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that people naturally gravitate towards something. And I think not judging yourself on what that thing might be is the first thing. So like astrology, so tropical astrology specifically, Western tropical astrology is very mainstream at this point and usually ends up in someone's feed. And they're like, they usually know their sun sign. And they're like, I know that I'm a whatever sign. And if they are really into that, it's like, let yourself, express that, whether it's like saying, well, of course I'm going to, be a stickler about this thing and whatever it is I teach because I'm a Virgo, like it's fun. It makes it more fun. There are certain modalities that I'm seeing people get really hot about lately, but they're much bigger. So like human design would be one of them. But, if you have the capacity, the time and the space, and you're super interested in it, it's like, let yourself enjoy it. And it's like, first of all, what does it inform you about you before you try to make it part of, say, like your messaging or offers or something? I am seeing some people who have like just learned about something like human design, or they're just learning tarot and they're already putting out offers for it. And I'm like, y'all, take a breath. That's like, in business where it's like, I just learned how to post on Facebook. I'm going to throw out a course on how to post on Facebook, and it's like, let yourself absorb it first. And like, how does it help you make better decisions first? How does it help you show up more authentically? How does it help you do those things first? Because I guarantee that is probably going to help you move the needle bigger on your business in the near term. And then in the long term, it'll start showing up in deeper ways. But I think it's just going to keep getting more and more bigger and mainstream, because I think people are looking for more ways to learn about themselves. And like Myers-Briggs is fine. Colby scores are fine. But like to know your Enneagram and how to utilize it, or to know, to actually know your astrology, like really know it, or to understand your human design chart and how you actually live it. You're not just like reading it and like, well, it says this, and it's like, but do you act like that? And how true do those things feel for you? I think that's the main thing.
Yeah. That's so funny that you mentioned Myers-Briggs, because Myers-Briggs and Enneagram, they're like, it's astrology for all of those things for business.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know. Every corporate situation I've been in, we've had to do some version of that.
Yeah. Myers-Briggs, DISC, StrengthsFinder.
Yeah.
Always fun. Okay. Well, I know this because I know you have made changes in your business, but I would love if you would share with our audience, when did you know that you needed to pursue a pivot in your business? What are those aha signs when you were like, I'm switching, you've told us your history of like going from blogging to, the system stuff. How, when?
Oh my, I actually think that the first sign that we all get is like in your private, quiet space when nobody's watching you, in your heart, you're just like, I don't like this anymore. You just know it. You're just like, I just don't like it anymore. Because I think if you still like it, you're still going to do it. Like they always say, like when the market's down on something, it's up on something else. But even when the market's down in one area, there are still people offering that thing, and they're still surviving or doing the thing. They're just not doing a lot of it. And because my personal prediction is that the high ticket mastermind programs are really going to just bottom out. I think it's a bubble that's about to burst. I think it's already bursting, actually. And I think that it doesn't mean that they're just going to be extinct like the dinosaur. You'll still find them. They're just not going to be as many, and at least not for a while, because there's a serious quality problem going on.
That's what I was going to say, because I feel like it's not like they've not added anything new to it. It's like, hey, we've run the same thing for 10 years, and it's just like, you need to layer on additional needs to meet your audience needs, right? Like,
Yeah. And I think too, like another sign is recognizing when the era is over, like the era has passed. So like those mastermind groups, you hear these stories about like, well, it's usually like within the first 2 to 3, maybe 4 or 5 years, it was real magic, and I feel like that's always a sign of, there was a certain class of entrepreneurs, a graduating class that entered the market at the same time. They solved a ton of problems. They were real innovative. They disrupted the market. They did something cool that was new. And then everybody standardized the crap out of it and oversold it. And I think one of the things that helps a lot for making the pivot is getting good at recognizing patterns. I recognize patterns. I keep track of them, not just by like magical observation. Like, I'm actually keeping track of them. And I think this is where the systems shows up. This is where maybe you have spreadsheets or databases, but it can also be something as simple like I will filter email, and I subscribe to, I don't, well, this year I've actually cut back quite a lot. I think I'm subscribed to, if I'm lucky, maybe it's 100 newsletters right now, but it's pretty typical that I'll subscribe between 100 and 200 newsletters. And I don't read them all the time, but I do let the mail filter in, and I look at how frequently somebody emails, and I look at the language that's used, and I'll just kind of like binge them when I need to look for an answer, kind of like going to an encyclopedia in the library. And I'll look to see, like, because you can scan your email and look at the headlines that they're used, subject lines, and it's like, do they resend? Because I'm not opening it regularly, so I'll be on a resend list. It's like, are they resending? Like, how much are they pinging me? What are they doing? Because of the work that I've done, I'm fortunate that I know what it's like to see somebody have a team of people help them produce launches and whatnot. So I can spot the signs of, well, there's no way a solopreneur is doing this on their own. Like, there's just no way. But I think too, like, as long as you're not a beginner and you're willing to really look at the picture of your favorite, person that you look up to, like, you can also see where, something is truly theirs, or where they're relying on other people behind the scenes to help them make that happen. Some of them are very crafty in the way they position themselves to look like, it's just me. It's just me and you. And it's like, no way in hell, lady. There's no way. But yeah, like with the pivots, I'll look for those changes in the pattern in the market. And I feel like, I mean, some of the writing on the wall can be really obvious. Like for me, I was watching my launch fail, and I knew I was on shaky ground because the leads going into launch were not great. And I thought, well, maybe I can squeak by. Maybe I can make this thing squeak by, and, we can actually make a final year happen. But I was pretty sure, I was like, this is going to be the final year. I knew it. But then, because I'm keeping track of what else is going on in the market, and I'm going to conferences, and I'm talking to people, and I've got my relationships who are telling me things, and it's like, oh, there is a very clear pattern here. And I saw it happening real early. There was a shift, and I saw some people who had really large programs, and they were suddenly just quietly retiring them. And then I saw some other people who previously had been really heavy in the launching space just kind of go dark. And I went, oh, I don't think I'm the only one. Because I think sometimes when you're not as big a business, you're like, oh, I'm small potatoes. Like, what does it matter what my thing? And it's like, no, you're still in the same space as they are. And it's like, use that to your advantage, because they by default are probably sharing more things than you do. And you can spot what the market is trying to do, sooner.
You talk a lot about your body being one of your first systems, and you also recently chatted about like making sure that you understand your body, making sure that that system's in line, and then making sure that you know what your body's trying to tell you and what your intuition is trying to tell you. And so my question for you is, if you're someone like me who is maybe newer to listening to themselves and newer to listening to their intuition, who spent a lot of years ignoring stuff like that, what would you say to me or someone else who is questioning if it's intuition or anxiety or OCD or ADHD? Like, what would you say? Like, how would you tell them to actually start listening to themselves?
Oh my God, that's like a stop, drop, and roll moment. That's like, sometimes you're just not going to know right away, honestly. And also with that, like, the more you do develop true connection to your intuition, like once you've honestly connected with your intuition, it's like a bicycle. Like, you can't unlearn how to ride it. You can't unsee it. So you know when you're on or not. the thing that the exploration in the spiritual practice is really, how do I run myself through conscious choice tests for myself to figure out like the levels of me. So it's like, where and how does my ego show up? How does it feel as compared to genuine intuition, as opposed to, this is so my ADHD looking for a dopamine hit right now. And it's like, but that's the best thing ever. And you're just like, oh shit. And I think that you always know it's not your intuition. I think figuring out when it's not your intuition is probably like the easier place to go to first. And because sometimes we can justify things like, but spirit told me. Spirit told me I should do this, whatever, And I think when something won't let you go, because you're not rushing into it, right? So there's like a period of time passing, and it's like that piece of inspiration, it won't leave your space. It just continues to get more detailed. It just continues to talk to you patiently and gently. That's probably a lot more intuition than, say, ADHD wanting some dopamine over here in this moment, or like a flight or fight response because anxiety has kicked in or something. Those types of things typically tend to have this like sort of, oh, Mr. Giles is so meowing at us right now. I don't know if you can hear him.
He's like, I love the little meows, by the way. It's like,
it's like, I have things to say. Or he wants tuna. It's one or the other. So when you have this, like, it's do or die, I gotta do it now, I usually find that's really not intuition. Like, you can get a really strong intuitive hit that's like, I really need to do this thing. I'm feeling the urgency. But like, when you're not ignoring your intuition, you get these like gentle ticklings that are kind of like, it's kind of like we're talking about making these pivots, it's like something is changing in the coaching industry. I can feel it. I can smell it in the air. It's like Mary Poppins. The wind is shifting. Something's changing, and like, let me start paying more attention. And but if it's like, if you don't do this in the next 5 minutes, you're not going to get the extra set of Jinsu knives, and you're like, no, that's not intuition. I do think that, I mean, they say that entrepreneurship is the best self-development course you'll ever take. And I think like this is where we as entrepreneurs have a responsibility to do that self-development. Like, we have to make the time and the space for it. And it doesn't have to be like big and overly involved. Like, I've heard of some people where like they can't function if they don't have this like elaborate 2-hour routine in the morning. And I'm like, yeah, I know. That's my face too.
Who are these humans?
That's my face too. Like, they have to.
Are they getting up at 4 a.m.? Like,
yeah, like they have to do like their meditation ritual on top of the manifestation ritual, on top of the green smoothie and the thing and the whatever. And I'm like, that is so much ego needing feeding. There might also be other, personal, therapeutic, mental health things that also need to be addressed there. And it's like, okay, what is that telling me, But to be like, I did my meditation, I did my manifestation visualization, and it told me I need to do this thing, And it's like, did it really like put yourself through your own series of tests? Like, test yourself, I think that just so much of what we do, like, your intuition is not going to clash with what your heart wants. So if you're like resisting doing something, but you're like, but my intuition is saying that I need it, but I don't want to. And it's like, that's not intuition then. It's like, what part of you are you talking to, And learning that discernment it just takes refinement, but you also have to want to let it in, And I think sometimes, people want to hear what they want to hear, and we live and we learn, and sometimes you're just totally wrong too. And that's how you learn, Sometimes you're like, I was so convinced that I should do that conference, that event, and you like spend all the money and the time and you go, and it's just like one disaster after another, and you're just like, and then you're in the middle of it and you're like, oh, that wasn't intuition. Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
That's how you learn. That's such a good answer, and a reminder that I feel like I asked that question for very personal reasons.
I love that you asked the question though, because I think a lot of people have that question and they're afraid to ask it. And I have also struggled to give answers for it. So you're kind of inspiring me in this moment in a way, actually, just kind of cool, because I've had people ask me over the years, they're like, how did you incorporate the intuitive stuff with the business stuff? And I haven't had a very clear answer. It's starting to get a little clearer because I've sort of been forcing myself lately to actually like break it down and articulate it. But again, it's an example of like, well, time kind of has to pass. Like I kind of have to see how it's operating before I can explain it. Because when you're in it, like, when you're in it in the middle of something, it's really hard to see the forest through the trees. And but I because I'm seeing such a rise on people wanting to incorporate intuitive spiritual things with business, I'm like, I think it's about time that I finally figure out how to explain it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you had said something there about like that, like sense of urgency dynamic, like you should be able to put things on a shelf and and evaluate with yourself if this still is a thing. Like, we had been talking, how many months ago was that, about this summit idea, which I still have, but it doesn't need to be a right now thing. My intuition is that we will need this eventually. And because of what the market was doing in December and January, we have shelved it until it feels like the right time, because, nothing is more annoying than you put all this time and energy around something that wasn't a right time thing. And then you also end up beating yourself up about it because you're like, oh my gosh, this didn't work. So I think there's that if you have that urgency need to make the decision right now, that's usually not an intuition thing. That's I want something right, an urgency want like to do it thing, not, it's a different part of your brain system. So, like you said, the dopamine.
Totally. Yes, it's totally, and I think sometimes we get inspired by other people. Like podcasts are picking up right now. And I see a lot of people like, I got to like launch my podcast. And it's like, do you have a system to support you to do that? Because this is a really big undertaking, and like I know you behind the scenes, so I know how long you've been building up to this moment. But I meet so many people and they're like, I think I'm going to launch next week. And I'm like, oh. And usually that's like an egoic response. It's like, you want to hear yourself on a mic. It's like, how about if you guest on some other people's podcasts for like 3 to 6 months while you also at the same time build up your systems to get your own going. And that's not the glamorous answer, it's just not. So that's usually a really good it's really usually a great indication that there's some other driving force.
Well, Mary, this is a big honkin' episode. I feel like we covered just so much. I think we lied to you. We're like, it's going to be 20 minutes. And it was not 20 minutes, but you've shared so much great content and information. We wanted to just wrap up with, is there anything you would like to plug? And of course, we will have all your links and things you shared with us in the show notes. But this is your time to plug whatever it is you want to share.
Well, we talked so much about the Sunday newsletters. Well, first of all, I send a weekly newsletter on Saturdays, and that one is free, and it includes the general reading, which is in there. So people who are still like starting out or whatnot, that's a great place to hop into. And then if you want to go deeper, which you guys do, I have the extended readings that come out every Sunday. And the readings are specifically for business. So as a reader, like you can go on YouTube And there's a couple of readers I really love because they will actually give some great like business or professional career kind of angle on things, but they still incorporate relationships and love. And the joke amongst readers is, it's always love or money, love or money. And it's true. I mean, those are the really big driving forces in life. But I found that when I created my space, I wanted to have a space that was really dedicated towards the entrepreneur experience, because when you're trying to get some connection to your intuition and, have somebody else's words help you connect with it so you can hear yourself better and whatnot, like it's hard to do that when they then flip into, does he love me? Does he love me not? And you're just like, like stay on the other point. So we focus just on business, and I really love the space. I love that you all love the space too. And so that comes out every week on Sundays. It's a monthly subscription. This year in 2024, the rate is $19 per month. I have a new sales page that is about to come out for it, and calling it a latte level investment because I'm a coffee hound. So I was like, yeah, it's totally a latte.
Still having coffee over here.
Exactly. And if you put as many shots of espresso in your drink as I do. So the Sunday newsletter is a really great way to have something on your time that is a ritual for you to work on your business instead of in your business on a weekly basis. And it's just like shows up and it's just there for you. So I'm doing that. This year I've shifted away from doing incubator, which we talked about, which used to be very high touch, in person on Zoom kind of environment. And now I'm doing asynchronous voice coaching, so Voxer coaching. And I've got some people who have been longtime coaches of mine who are in that space now. And that has been a ton of fun. I'm finding it's really powerful. I think it's part of the season that we're in right now. You don't need to show up on camera. Nobody's looking at you. Nobody else is hearing you except me. And we're just talking through what you need to talk through. I have some really nifty plugins that I use that help us manage the talk space so that, we can summarize the messages so it doesn't feel overwhelming. But people talk to me Monday through Friday. You can talk as much as you want. And I respond at least once a day. And every month we audit something. So we'll talk through like, what do we need to audit this month? And then I will look over, whether it's, content that they're creating or if they're working on like their mission. I got somebody right now who's trying to work on her mission statement. Like she's been going through a really big change. It's very emotional for her. So like that's a really great example of that too. And it's a really easy container so that it's not this big, overly involved member space where you have to like show up and it's activated by you. So if you are going on vacation or you don't want to talk for a couple days, it's all good, but as soon as you do talk, I will be there and I will respond to you. So that is happening. I have monthly packages and I also have quarterly packages. And I have that information going up on my website as well. That's been a private VIP offer, but now that it's clearly working, that will be up probably by the time this goes live. So that'll be over on the website. And then I've got my podcast, which Ashlyn has been a guest on.
I just listened to that episode.
Oh my God, so much fun. It was such a good episode. Yeah. So season 1, so we do the movie and TV analogies. And season 1, we all had a lot of homework and we watched The Last of Us on HBO and talked about hard things and how to finish hard things. And I'm so proud of that season. I love that season so much. And then in season 2 is going to come out this year. I'm actually in the process right now of outlining scripting and figuring out like the format. I think the format's going to change just a little bit. So I'm working on that. Everybody knows Ted Lasso is very much a part of that. It might include more than Ted Lasso. I don't know. But Ted Lasso for sure, because it's time.
That's awesome.
It's time.
Yeah.
So
that's exciting. So
all of that's over there. And then people who want my free library, I I have also exited the online course space. So you don't need to log in for anything. You just go to YouTube and like everything's on YouTube now. So people can watch me over there. And I like to model the act of pumping out content and really making sure people know that I am a true solopreneur. Sometimes I get some help behind the scenes. You always know when I do, because I always give those people credit. And for the most part, though, like I am a single producer, and it's like it is possible to put out high craftsmanship quality content and do it regularly and not lose your mind over it and feel really creatively fulfilled. And that's really what I try to do with everything. So yeah, systems all the way, yo.
Yeah, I love it. And your content has been very inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, I feel like I was going to say something, but that will plow us into a whole nother episode. So Mary, I hope you will consider coming back again, because I definitely want to plug so many more things that I learned from you, and you inspire me so much, and want to just say thank you so much for being on our podcast. And
thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you for being here today.
I'm so excited for you both. Huge congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll say bye to everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Take the Leap podcast. We hope you found useful takeaways you can apply to your entrepreneurial journey. Subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, and keep in touch and follow us on Instagram. If you have business questions, shoot us a direct message or leave us a comment. We'll try to cover it in an upcoming episode. And visit our website, taketheleap-today.com, for more resources like our online course that accompanies this podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning in today for our intermission between seasons 1 and 2 on the School of Moxie podcast. I'll be back soon with a trailer and fresh episodes for season 2 when we dive into Ted Lasso with our season 2 guest lineup. In the meantime, I highly encourage you to check out season 1 with The Last of Us. You can watch the show and listen to the discussions wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. Links to all show materials are in the show notes for the episode. Remember to subscribe to this podcast on the podcast app of your choice, and I always appreciate it when you leave a 5-star review. It really helps other people find this podcast, and that ongoing support is truly what helps me bring more cool stuff to your headphones. You can also subscribe for email updates with me at sensiblewoo.com/subscribe. And don't forget to stay in touch by following me on Instagram and YouTube. This episode was recorded and produced at the Sensible Woo home office, and my sound master, as always, is Chris Martin from Chris Martin Studios in Vancouver, Washington. Until next time, remember to be sensible, be woo, and always be you.